What's going on, guys? It's Cal here from Buffalo SportsCenter. Today we're going to be talking about Joe Brady. Coming into this season, Joe Brady was the quarterback's coach. His resume is pretty solid, though, and for him being a quarterback's coach, I was definitely okay with it. But now he's the interim offensive coordinator because Ken Dorsey got fired mid-season. Now, Joe Brady is far from perfect. Obviously, he did not have an offensive coordinator or head coach job coming into this year or the year prior, but he is now the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. And I think through a week, he's looked pretty solid. Definitely better than Ken Dorsey was right off the bat. But I think a lot of people are a little too quick to assume he should be the next offensive coordinator. Let's dive in a little deeper here. Ken Dorsey was about as pathetic as you could get from the offensive coordinator position. 2 failed years. Well, 1.5, right? The first year, it was okay. His players bailed him out a little bit. But everyone could see right from the get-go that Ken Dorsey's play calling was just not great. And this season, it took a turn for the worst. I mean, how many times did we see Ken Dorsey go out there and run the same formation, sometimes the same play, 3, 4, 5 times in a row to zero success? Now, I'm far from an NFL coach. And I know a lot of these fans claim that they could probably step into his role and be better, which is simply not true. There's a lot of prep that goes into being an offensive coordinator, a lot of stress, sometimes hours and hours and hours of game planning just for a 60-minute game, right? So there's a lot of background knowledge you have to have, a lot of terminology that the simple casual fan wouldn't have. But, I mean, some people probably could have went into that booth and called a better game than Ken Dorsey some of those weeks. I got to be honest. He was horrible. So him being fired was definitely the right move for the Buffalo Bills. Do I think Ken Dorsey could be a good play caller somewhere else? Absolutely. But he was playing like he had Mac Jones at quarterback, or Zach Wilson, or Bailey Zappi, or some, B-tier, C-tier quarterback. He's got an A-tier quarterback in Josh Allen. A true unicorn, one of one. A guy who can chuck the ball downfield further than any NFL quarterback in the league, possibly ever. A guy who can move around on his feet better than a lot of quarterbacks. And he was literally using him like a Mac Jones. So Ken Dorsey, clearly, I mean, we've talked about it several times here. He was play calling for a college team. He was play calling for a high school team even. Sometimes some of the stuff he was running out there. Definitely not qualified for the position. And definitely not qualified for the Buffalo Bills, who needed an offensive coordinator that gave Josh Allen the playbook in his hands, gave Josh Allen all the confidence he needed. And Joe Brady's done that, right? Look at that Eagles game last week, right? We look at the Eagles game, downpour, absolute downpour. Most offensive coordinators would say ground and pound, we're going to win this game, dinking and dunking, run game. And the Bills' run game has been the best it's been in the last 5-6 years, right? I don't remember these statistics from running backs since maybe LaShawn McCoy, but you go further back to the years with Fred Jackson, CJ Spiller, all that. The Bills' run game the last couple of years has been pathetic, but it's been okay, right? We've had good receivers. We've had Josh Allen doing it all himself. We don't need the running game. This year we committed to it, and I think we know who to blame for that. Probably Sean McDermott wanting to run his ground and pound style, give the defense time to the sideline. So that didn't play in favor of Ken Dorsey. Kind of had to listen to Sean McDermott there. But even his run plays were horrible. I mean, he would do a halfback draw on 2nd and 5, clear as day, right up the middle with James Cook, of all people, the one running back who cannot run up the middle in a bunch formation. And we would get stuffed time and time and time again, and they wouldn't change it. Joe Brady, he's done a little bit of different formations. And I got to say, I've liked what I've seen so far. He's implemented Ty Johnson into the running game, who Joe Brady didn't even give a look. Ty Johnson was a pretty solid back for the Jets. Granted, he didn't play that much, but in the time he did have, he had a couple splash plays, and I was excited when we first got him. Ty Johnson's in the lineup, and consistently the last 2 games against the Jets and against the Eagles, he's been a top back on our team. I mean, every time he touches the ball, it's chunk play after chunk play after chunk play. Now, I get it, the Jets probably were not game planning for Ty Johnson, had no idea what was going on, kind of a random move when we put him in. The Eagles had a week. They had time to decide, and Ty Johnson lit them up too in a primarily ground and pound type game. But the one big thing that Joe Brady did that Ken Dorsey refused to do was let Josh Allen be himself. Ken Dorsey had reins, he had grapples over Josh Allen, refused to let him throw the ball downfield, refused to let him leave the pocket. I'll say it time in and time out. Josh Allen is very dangerous outside the pocket, and you get him moving, he does not want to go down, sometimes to his own fault, right? We've seen Josh Allen fumble how many countless times, just, trying to get that extra yard. But it doesn't matter. That's the kind of guy he is. He's not going to change. And Ken Dorsey wanted to change Josh Allen. That did not happen. And the two did not clash well. And, it's ironic because Josh Allen was the guy who handpicked Ken Dorsey to be the offensive coordinator. It didn't work. Joe Brady, through 2 weeks, has given Josh Allen everything he needs. Given him good plays, spacing out receivers, and let him run the ball. And that has been the key difference in this offense. The Bills should be 2-0 under Joe Brady. Unfortunately, the defense couldn't get it done in that second half against the Eagles game. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I've seen enough from Joe Brady to be confident in this Bills team going forward. 5 more games left. The playoffs are still a huge possibility, and I think a good possibility if this offense keeps playing like they are. So we'll see what happens there. But the last thing I want to talk about is Ken Dorsey versus Joe Brady and his wide receiver routes. This is a thing that I noticed early last season, the switch from Brian Dable to Ken Dorsey. Immediately I noticed this, is receivers ended up in the same spot far too often. You'd have deep routes where Gabe Davis and, Stephon Diggs or Dawson Knox last year would end up colliding almost. It doesn't, you go against a zone where a guy's guarding basically grass down the field and you send 2 of your receivers at them. That's one of the dumbest things you can do. Even against man, you're giving them, 2 defenders to guard 2 guys. You chuck the ball up into that zone, there's 2 defenders there to swat the ball away. So it just makes no sense what Ken Dorsey was doing, and this didn't change. Into this season, we've seen Bills receivers run into each other on the field because the routes were so complicated. We've seen Gabe Davis kind of fall off because the routes are, 3 different choices per route. You could either run a streak, you could run a curl. It was just far too complicated, and his schemes were far too simplistic. It's kind of an oxymoron there, but, if you know football, you would see that as a defensive coordinator, it was so easy to pick apart the Bills' offense, and the receivers would just run the wrong routes all the time because they didn't know what was going on. You bring in Trent Sherfield, and I don't think he knows the plays. I really don't. He's caught the ball maybe 3 times this season. It's an absolute embarrassment that this offense has become. But, so far through 2 weeks, Joe Brady looks like the real deal. I'm not going to say he should be the next offensive coordinator. I think there's a lot of bigger names out there. But if he keeps, scheming up stuff that lets the Bills be themselves, and the Bills go on to make the playoffs, I don't see a reason why he shouldn't be the next offensive coordinator. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. It's clear as day that Ken Dorsey was a huge issue. McDermott still might be, kind of horsing around on the offense, kind of holding it back a little bit. I don't know for sure, but, I'd like to speculate a little bit of that. But let me know in the comments, do you think Joe Brady should be the offensive coordinator of the future? Or do you think the Bills should get a new mind in on this offense? Potentially bring back Brian Dable, Frank Reich's available. There's a lot of names, even Jim Bob Cooter. So we'll see what happens with that situation. But let me know in the comments what you think. And hopefully the Bills can go on a playoff run under Joe Brady. Thanks for watching.